What would you think if we told you that the ancient Egyptians had a dark side? That they guarded secrets so terrifying that they were hidden for millennia? Get ready to learn the disturbing truth about the Pharaonic Empire. Scientists have recorded a groundbreaking discovery that completely overturns our previous knowledge of this mysterious people. What else might lie dormant inside the mighty pyramids and in the fabled tombs? Stay tuned and see which sensational finds have already been recorded and which are still waiting to come back to light. The mystery of mummification. Why did the ancient Egyptians mummify their dead? Quite clearly, they wanted to preserve the bodies of the deceased for eternity. But what would you think if we told you that everything we think we know about mummification is wrong? For example, researchers at the University of Manchester came to the revolutionary realization that the pharaohs' empires never intended to preserve the bodies. In truth, the elaborate burial technique served to lead the deceased to divinity. But what causes the experts to this thesis, which throws our previous state of knowledge completely over the heap? Well, if one follows the statements of Campbell Price, then what we have to do here with a combination of a historical distortion and a Western misinterpretation. Specifically, the Manchester Museum curator stated that the widespread misconception is still based on the idea of Victorian explorers. These wrongly assumed that the Egyptians preserved their dead in a similar way as one preserves fish to be eaten at a later date, with the help of salt. However, the salty substance used by the ancient inhabitants was quite different from the salt used in fish processing. The naturally occurring mineral was abundant in the lakes around the Nile and played a fundamental role in mummification. In addition, we know that sodium bicarbonate was also used in temple rituals and applied to the statues of the gods. It was used for purification. Incense, which was often associated with mummies, was also likely a gift to the gods. Campbell added, even the word sentur, which the ancient Egyptians used for incense, translates as nothing more than to make divine. When you burn incense in a temple, you make the room divine. When you apply incense resins to a body, you make the deceased into a divine being. You don't necessarily preserve him. Accordingly, we would have to abandon the notion that the Egyptians believed they needed their bodies in the afterlife. According to Campbell, the removal of the internal organs also speaks to this. It was basically a matter of turning the body into a divine statue, because the dead person was to be transformed. Labyrinth of Hawara. Built at the behest of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, who came to power around the year 1842 BC, the Labyrinth of Hawara is said to have effortlessly eclipsed all other structures across the globe. The problem? The colossal complex was already destroyed in ancient times, which is why the true splendor can only be partially reconstructed today. So, in order to understand what splendor the structure once felt, we should ask someone who was allowed to admire it with his own eyes. Therefore, we leave the floor at this point to the Greek historian Herodotus, who described the legendary labyrinth in detail in his Histories. The Egyptians built a labyrinth that surpasses even the pyramids. It has 12 covered courtyards with gates facing each other. There are 3,000 chambers in all, 1,500 above, and as many below the ground. We learned about the underground chambers, but the Egyptian guards would not show them to us under any circumstances. They were the burial chambers of the sacred crocodiles and the kings who had first built this labyrinth. But we saw the upper chambers with our own eyes, and they are creations greater than anything man has ever built. The exits of the chambers and the winding passages were infinite wonders to us. Over all of this is a roof, and the walls are covered with figures. Each courtyard is surrounded with columns of white stone. Near the corner where the labyrinth ends is a huge pyramid. To this pyramid was made an underground passage. That such a wondrous complex actually existed is also shown by the reports subsequently made by other historians. Herodotus' compatriots, Strabon and Diodorus, were also deeply impressed by the size and overwhelming architecture of the labyrinth. As detailed as the descriptions of the labyrinth are, the tradition of its demise is very vague. Exactly when and by whom the complex was destroyed is still the subject of research. What is certain, however, is that in 1843, the Egyptologist Carl Richard Lepsius claim to have uncovered the location of the famous labyrinth. Then, 45 years later, Egyptian explorer Flinders Petrie traveled to Hawara, where he interpreted the brick chambers discovered by Lepsius as the remains of the Greco-Roman site built on the ruins of the labyrinth. And although Petrie was able to track down some Egyptian statues of Amenhotep III at the time, the actual structure still slumbers in obscurity. If and when the legendary labyrinth will be freed from its sandy hiding place is currently still written in the stars. Unknown Queen. In 2022, Egyptology was enriched by an absolute world sensation. A team led by Zahi Hawass succeeded in discovering 300 coffins, over 100 mummies, and the tomb of a completely unknown queen in Saqqara. What's more, a pyramid has even been dedicated to the mysterious ruler. You have to imagine that a woman who was once one of the most powerful people of her time just disappeared into the recesses of the past. While we don't know of any historical records that mention the unknown queen, researchers have at least been able to find out that she went by the name of Neith. As part of this unique discovery, experts have rewritten history and added another exciting mystery to the past. Tattooed mummies. Sorry, Otzi, there is a new record holder. For a long time, the world-famous glacier mummy was considered the oldest find of a human with a tattoo. In the number category, Otzi is still no one's equal. Thus, the Iceman had himself tattooed no less than 61 times 5,300 years ago. At this time, however, the mummies of Gebelion had already been dead for 51 years. Discovered in a small village in Upper Egypt, we are dealing with a man and a woman who are adorned with the oldest known tattoos in the world. The female mummy had dark tattoos on her shoulder and back, an angular line, and 4 symbols that look like the letter S. The man's upper right arm was again embellished by an imposing maned sheep and a large bull. A detailed analysis showed that he was murdered by a stab from behind when he was about 20 years old. However, apart from the records on the skin, there are no known written sources about the mummies of Gebelion. So we can only speculate about the deeper symbolism behind the tattoos. Possibly, the tattoos of the man were meant to demonstrate masculinity and strength. The S lines were placed so that they could or should be seen at all times. The other line is reminiscent of a stick that was used in ritual dances. Golden tongues. Archaeologists have discovered several mummies in Egypt that had golden plates in the place where their tongue was supposed to be. After the first finds were recorded in 1989 in the necropolis of Quesna, researchers were to track down several more mummies buried in the strange manner. Basically, the conclusion is that this practice was closely interwoven with the beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. For example, Osiris, the god of the dead, abhorred any form of noise. And perhaps the golden tongue allowed the mummies to speak to Osiris without making a sound. But if this was the case, why were not all the mummies buried with golden tongues? Although the gold tongues are clearly trying to communicate something to us, all we hear nowadays is an agonizing silence. The dark side. They created magnificent structures for eternity, sprouted unprecedented cultural flourishes, and mutilated their enemies in bestial ways. While the ancient Egyptians are admired today primarily for their progressiveness and extraordinary skills, we should not forget that the pharaohs also possessed a dark, bloodthirsty side. In any case, researchers came to this conclusion when they examined an ancient Egyptian palace a few hundred years ago. In detail, the experts recorded a macabre discovery: a hiding place with 12 severed right hands buried in pits in the courtyard. After the discovery in 2011, experts were initially divided about the background of the chopped-off body parts. Were they cut off as a punishment, or as part of a sacred ritual? A recently published study now suggests that we are dealing with bloody battle trophies. These were exchanged by warriors for golden beads as part of a ceremony. While this practice has been documented in tomb and temple inscriptions, this is the first time scholars have unearthed tangible evidence of it. There is some evidence to show that the hands served a higher purpose. On the one hand, they were found in 3 separate pits on the forefront of the palace, just in front of the throne room. On the other hand, the hands were very cleanly and carefully cut off. According to the study, however, it is unclear whether the body parts came from living or already dead persons. Since the discovered bones also did not contain intact DNA, it was not possible to reveal their origin. In principle, however, the experts assume that 11 victims were male and 1 was female. And with that, thanks for watching. Be very happy to leave us a thumbs up and a subscription to never miss one of our videos again. Before you take a look at the other videos in the credits, we'd like to ask your opinion. Which of the featured discoveries captivated you the most? Do you think that the legendary labyrinth will be excavated one day? And did you know that the Egyptians chopped off the hands of their enemies? We are looking forward to your comments. And with that, we say ciao and see you next time.